Hello coders, welcome to another How to Code Well Code School. It is Thursday, of course. Today in Code School, I'm going to be teaching HTML form validation. So let me just sort out some music. Bear with me just a second. There we go. It's 9 o'clock, British summertime. It's time to chill out and learn some code. So, what we're going to do today is HTML form validation, and this is kind of like the next step, if you will, from last week. Last week we were creating a contact form, and I was showing you how to do that in HTML5 and also creating it using field sets. Let's go and take a look at what that looks like. So if I go over to here, to the code, you should see the form. Yep, that's on the stream. So above here is a bunch of disabled fields, and you can see that by, if I was to click into these things, I can't press anything, I can't add anything into this. Now this form, just to give it some context, is a form that you could use to print out and then pass to perhaps your elderly neighbor, maybe in this crazy time where they can supply their details, and they could perhaps use your details to contact you, and tell you what they're after. So food supplies, meds, or even just a phone call. So what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to use this and validate it. So this means that when you hit submit, the form itself is validated. Now, I should start by talking about the different types of validation of on the internet in terms of websites, of course. So with there's many kinds of levels of validation that one needs to have. The first line of defense is on the client side. So there's two areas on the client side. There is JavaScript and there is HTML form built-in validation. On the other side of the coin, there is back-end validation and also data sanitization. We're not going to be playing around with that at this stage, and I'm not going to be looking at JavaScript validation yet. I'm only going to be looking at the inbuilt validation features of HTML5. Okay, so let's take a look at what we can and can't do already. So at the moment, if I submit this form, it's just going to go back to itself, and it's essentially going to refresh the page. And there's nothing validated here, so there's no warnings to say that we haven't entered a name. There's no checking on any of the values here, and there's no distinguish. There's nothing to distinguish that this should be a string, and this should be a bunch of numbers, and this shouldn't be empty. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm just going to take a slurp of tea. So these streams, these coding school streams, they're very different from the normal streams that I do Tuesday and Sundays, because these streams are specifically for beginner developers, beginner coders. It's a friendly environment. If you're learning to code, you've got any kind of questions, then do let me know. In the other streams, we are building far more complicated systems around How to Code Well, the How to Code Well platform. So if you're interested in those kind of things, PHP, Docker, and all of that jazz, then do tune in to the Tuesday and the Sunday streams. Hello, Mr. DB303. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you've had a good day. Okay, I'm going to take you over to the code repo first. So this is the repository. I will put a link, as always, in the show notes in the chat. And we can see that there's a HTML folder here. What I've done is I've created, if I clicked on the right, there we go, the right shortcut key. In HTML, we have lessons, so 1, 2, and 3. We are on the third lesson. Number 1 was talking about the document object model and HTML in general. Number 2 was building this contact form, and this is the third one where we're going to validate it. So before I start, I'm just going to go over to here, and this is a very good piece of documentation from Mozilla. I'll copy that, and I will also put this in the chat. I'll put these links as well in the Discord server, so if you haven't yet joined the Discord server, please do. The link to that is down here. And yeah, there's a great little coding community being built there where you can ask coding questions and also interact with me as well when I'm not on stream. Okay, so this link that I've sent is the Mozilla link for client-side form validation. And it says, before submitting data to a server, it is important to ensure all the required form controls are filled out in the correct format. This is called client-side form validation. So you would validate from the client side, and then you would validate from the server side, as I mentioned before, the two sides of validation. And essentially, from the client side, as mentioned, there's 2 ways to do it. There is, if I scroll down here, the different types of client-side validation. Built-in form validation uses HTML form validation features, which we've discussed in many places throughout this module. Okay, so this validation generally doesn't require much JavaScript. Built-in form validation has better performance than JavaScript, so that is important to note, but it is not as customizable as JavaScript. You could, of course, use JavaScript. Validation is coded using JavaScript. This validation is completely customizable, but you need to create it all or use a library. So what we're going to do is focus on the built-in form validation. If I scroll down here a little bit, we've got this section here using built-in form validation, and it lists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types of validation. So the first one is required, specifies whether a form field needs to be filled in before the form can be submitted. So this will stop the form being processed if the form field hasn't been completed, hasn't been filled out, and that's set to required. So this is very important. And then you've got the min length and max length, specifies the maximum and minimum length of a textual data, strings. You also have min and max. This does the same thing, but for numerical input values. So this means that, for instance, if I asked for, say, I don't know, your name, for instance, and you put your name down as just the letter A, then I could validate that you need to have more than just one character in that first name string. Likewise, if I was validating a telephone number, then I could ask for a minimum set of numbers that would make up that telephone number. You can go far more in depth and validate via a pattern. Now, this specifies a regular expression. This is something that I haven't actually ever taught, regular expressions, either on the YouTube channel or here on Twitch. It defines a pattern that when entered, the data needs to adhere to. If the data entered in the form field follows all of the rules specified by the above attributes, it is considered valid. If not, it is considered invalid. Now, something I should point out is that you can use both JavaScript and built-in form validation together. There's no harm in that. A good way of using both of those things is for setting the required attribute, maybe putting in some min and max stuff, and then handing it over to JavaScript to process more complicated things. For example, if you needed to validate multiple form fields together, maybe there's a selection type process. You select one thing and then that displays another form field, and you have to then validate that, sort of a dynamic validation. That's what I'm talking about. You would use JavaScript for that kind of thing. Okay, so the element when the element is valid, the following things are true. So this is talking about CSS pseudo classes, so the valid class here. We haven't talked about CSS yet, and we will be doing so in future streams. So you have the valid, and also you have the invalid, and also you have the out of range, depending on the error as well. So there's a lot of things that we can actually play with and capture from the CSS cascading style sheet point of view. Okay, so then you've got some examples here. We'll use some of these for the examples, but we're going to focus first of all on this. So this is the form that we created last time, and we've actually got two major field sets here. So the first one is my details. This is within this field set here, and these are all disabled. So I was showing you the disabled attribute last time, and this one here, this field set, is your details. So this is the things that you can fill out. These aren't disabled at all. However, there's no validation rules on here whatsoever. So the first one we're going to use is the required attribute. So if I go back to the code here, scroll up a little bit, you'll see that there is the required attribute. Let's just click on that, and I'll open that in a new tab. Okay, so this is an attribute. It is required. It is a Boolean, which means that you don't actually give it a value. It's not like, an attribute equals something or other. It's a Boolean, which, if present, indicates that the user must specify a value for input before the owning form can be submitted. The required attribute is supported by, and then you can see all of the different types of input types, yeah, that makes sense in my head, that you can use. So there's quite a few, right? There's quite a few. Along with the select and text area form control elements. If present on any of these input types and elements, the required pseudo class will match. If the attribute is not included, the optional pseudo class will match. So again, more things that we can play with CSS later on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go back to the code, and we're going to start filling that out. So what I would like to do is have both, well, actually all of it, your name, your mobile, and your address as required. We'll do one first, and I'll demonstrate what that does. So it's a Boolean. So all I need to do is just type in required, like that. And there we go. That's the first type of validation that we can do. This will now prevent the form from being submitted unless this has actually been filled out. We're not validating the value that was supplied. We're just saying that this input is required. Okay, so let's hit save, and I think I've got this running here. Yes. So if I was to refresh this page, there we go. If I hit submit, can you see now automatically we have this please fill in this field. Now, one thing I should say at this stage is that it does disappear, right, eventually, and also if you click off of it, and also there is this exclamation mark here. You can, if you want, you can control the style of these things, but it can be a little bit it's very different in different browsers. So, yeah. But that's cool. We can't submit the form at all. If you notice up on here, it's not actually refreshing. So this is preventing the form from going any further unless this form field is submitted. Okay, so if I was to hit something like this and then submit the form, that submits the form. All right, so what we're going to do then is we're going to apply all of these into here and on the text area. like so. Let's hit save. Let's refresh the page. Whoops. Refresh the page. There we go. And then hit submit. Now, notice we only get the first one first. Okay, so let's fill that out. Right, let's hit submit. Then we get the second one. So then let's fill that out. And now it's saying, please enter a number. Now, this is interesting because we haven't actually said, is that going to submit? There we go. So please enter a number. So it knows that it is a numeric data type, and it knows that you've supplied a bunch of letters, a string. So not only does it say that it is required, like please fill in this form, this field, but it knows that you need to supply, if I was just to put in that it needs to be a number. And it needs to be a number because in the previous lesson, what we did is we set the number, the type of number for this mobile. So that's pretty clever. It's quite intelligent. All right, let's take a look at the text area. So if we click on to here again, and let's just remove all this and put in some numbers. Now hit submit. We have this. Please fill in this field. So let's put that in and then hit submit. And what happens when you submit the form is that the form resets. Okay, so therefore it clears the form. You may have heard of the term of a sticky form, and this is where the form values are still in the form. And through JavaScript, you can do this, where if you have an invalid form field, but you submit it, you can have that sticky back. So you can actually see the input that you supplied. And also, if you've got some back-end validation working as well, and that's picked anything up, then that the JavaScript or the built-in HTML validation didn't pick up, then your form will be obviously refreshed, but you still want to keep the inputs. So if you've got a long form and one of those fields gets picked up by the back end, by PHP or Python or what have you, so it returns the form and then you have an error, well, you don't want to lose all of the other bits and pieces. So that becomes, therefore, a sticky form. It's a little bit above and beyond today's lesson, but I'm sure we'll get there at some point. Whoops. Okay, let's go back to the documentation here for a required. Okay, so this is required for text, search, URL, tell. So we've got a tell there for telephone, email, password, date, month, week, time, and so forth. We can also do it for a checkbox as well. Radio and file, text area, which we've just done, and of course the select. So if we were to do it on a checkbox, what do you think will happen? Because we've got multiple checkboxes here going on. So we've got, say, for example, if I go back to the page itself, we have what services do you require? Food supplies, meds, or a phone call. So we have these here. And if I was to put this as required, and then hit save, refresh the page, sorry, I'll do that there. Just quickly fill all these out with numbers, like that, and that for value, and then hit submit. We've got please tick this box if you want to proceed. Now, this is a tricky thing because this requires, therefore, that this checkbox is to be selected. So we're no longer taking the allowing the user to have this as an optional field. This is required. So you've got to be careful. Okay, so with checkboxes, they're usually used either if you are requesting someone to perhaps subscribe to a mailing list or allow their details to be sent to a marketing agency, or have a bunch of optional inputs such as this. So, for example, if I was to put this all as required, and this one down, inputs here, inputs, and this one, sorry, I've missed that one, haven't I? There we go. So they are all required. Let's refresh the page and then put in all of this. So this is just numeric stuff, and that's text. If I went to submit, we get this one. Let's tick that, submit, we get that one. Let's hit submit. Again, we get this one, and there we go. Now, this is actually breaking the user journey here, because we want this to be a selection, an optional selection. There isn't a way in the built-in HTML to check if one of these is selected. You would have to do that in JavaScript. You would have to loop over these checkboxes and make sure that at least one is selected. So here is a good demonstration of where the functionality ends or starts and ends in terms of built-in HTML validation. We wouldn't be able to validate this using without JavaScript. If this form was submitted with none of these, then I would class that as an invalid form. But there's no way of telling whether at least one of these has been checked without JavaScript. So, okay, let's hit submit here. So there we go. Just do that as another example. So submit here and then submit there. And then submit the form and off it goes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is remove all of these. I'm going to press Ctrl Z because I'm lazy, and we're just going to bring this back to what it was. There we go. Okay, so that's the required section. Mr. DB has asked, I take it that the tell will allow a space better than a number in this scenario. That's a very good question. So you're referring to here, this is the type of number. Now this will only check for numeric values. Oh, sorry, this will only allow numeric values. However, as Mr. DB has rightfully mentioned here, that there are certain formats that a telephone number can have, depending on where you are, obviously, in the world. Let's go and check that out. So let's go over to here, and these are all linkable. So I'm going to open that up in here, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put it in the chat, like so. Okay. So input elements of type tell are used to let the user enter and edit a telephone number. Unlike input type of email, which we haven't done yet, and input type of URL, the input value is not automatically validated to a particular format before the form can be submitted. Because, of course, with emails, it's validating that it is an email address, and with a URL, it's validating that it's a right HTML, a hyperlink. Or web address, I should say. Because formats for telephone numbers vary so much around the world, yes. So let's scroll down a bit. This is where we get involved with the pattern. So here we have enter your phone number. And so this has got an ID of phone, a name of phone, and the type of tell. It's also got a pattern here. Despite the fact that inputs of type tell are functionally identical to text inputs, they do serve a useful purpose. The most quickly apparent of these is mobile browsers. Yes. I remember when this first came out, this changed a lot of forms that a lot of websites that had contact forms with telephone numbers like this that had mobile responsive designs or just mobile designs. There was a big request to change all the telephone number input fields to have tell, and this is because a mobile application will identify that this is a telephone number, and it will load up the the keypad, the telephone keypad. If you give the form field focus, so if you click into that form field on a mobile phone, then the keypad will be displayed, much like how you would just dial a phone number. So rather than the normal text keypad, it will be the phone keypad. So it became quickly apparent of these that mobile browsers, especially on mobile phones, may opt to present a custom keyboard optimized for entering phone numbers using a specific input for telephone numbers. Also makes adding custom validation and handling of phone numbers more convenient. So because it itself is a custom element, being that it has its own type and everything, you can then look for that in, say, CSS or JavaScript or what have you, and then you can apply certain roles to that specific thing. So in terms of validation, no, it doesn't really have anything different. I'll be talking about the pattern in just a second. We might use the telephone number as an example, but in terms of mobile applications, it's very important. So with this, for example, if I clicked in here, I can just put in text, right? But if I was on a mobile phone, I would have a keypad that gets loaded up, and I would only be able to put in the characters on the keypad. Hey, Scav Dan. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so let's go back to the form and see where we are at. Okay, so we've got these required things in here. It knows that this is a phone number. What I'm going to do is just I'm going to validate the name first, and then we'll tackle and then perhaps the address, and then we'll probably tackle the mobile afterwards, because this has to do a lot with the pattern. Okay, so what we're going to do on this one is we're going to use the max and min for the length. So if I go back over to here and have a look at this stuff here, min length and max length specifies the minimum and maximum length of a textual data string. So, for example, the person's name, I think, needs to have a minimum length of at least 2. Maximum length, let's just put in, say, 20. So what we can do here is we can go over to the code, and we can start putting in. What I like doing personally is I like putting all of my validation stuff together, right? So I wouldn't have over here, I mean, you could do, there's nothing wrong with this, of course, but I wouldn't do max length is, say, 20, like so, and then have required over there. What I would do, personally, this is only personal preference, is I would put them close together. Same with min length. So this is going to be min length is equal to 2. All right, so let's hit save. So we've got max length here and we've got min length. Max length is being 20, min length is being 2. Another thing that I like personally doing is having the min length before, and also min, before the max. I find that is far more readable. So minimum, maximum, and it's required. All right, so let's hit save, and then let's go back to wherever the code's gone over here. All right, so first of all, we'll hit submit. This is, please fill in this form. This is the name here. Now we're going to put in just A. All right, check this out. Now I haven't put any messages in at all for this. If I would just put in A here, and then came off of this. Sorry, A, and then submit. It will say, please lengthen this text to 2 characters or more. Let's do that again. You are currently using 1 character. So if I went to A, B, and then hit submit, that will be valid. And then we get this invalidness here. Let's see if I can do more than 20. I should have gone for a lower number, to be honest, but let's just hold down the A and just put in a whole bunch of stuff. All right, let's hit submit. Oh, no, that's not enough. Is that actually... okay, yeah. So, yeah. Okay, so it's not allowing me to go any further. There we go. So on submit, this will always be 20. So D, all the way, and then it stops. So I can't put in F or G. That will be always 20. All right. Mr. DB says, thanks, I didn't know you could define a pattern. Yes, for tell, definitely. Then again, going down the pattern route for a telephone number is a dangerous road to go down. Yes, because there's all sorts of things that you need to validate. Area codes, you need to validate international country codes, all of this stuff. And it gets to a point where you actually have more than one input. Yeah, we won't create a definitive mobile number validation. I mean, better people than me have done that, so we're not going to do this. This is just for a pure example. Okay, let's remove that for a minute. We'll do a validation on the address as well. So here again, we'll have the mix, the min and the min length and the max length, like so. We're going to put that in here.
Hello, coders.
Like this. We'll keep it to, let's do 30. Let's do 50. I'm feeling generous. Min length, I probably want to have 6, I guess, unless, I mean, yeah, I reckon so. Let's hit save. So this is going to be treated much the same. Hey, thank you very much for following. A learner has followed. Thank you very much. Hello. Thank you. I do appreciate it. I hope you're doing well today. I hope you are feeling good. Right, let's just try that out. So we're going to hit save, and then we're going to go back to here, and I'll refresh this. So this needs to be like blah, 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 and then this is all of these things. Now we have 6 here, so we're going to do 1, and then hit submit. So please lengthen the text. You must have 6 characters or more. There we go. Hey, it's hey, thank you very much for joining. Is the right pronunciation Topeka? I'm rubbish with usernames. Troikla. No, Troika. We'll get there in the end. Troika. Thank you very much. Yeah, am I right in remembering that you were in the Beachcast stream yesterday? With Adam. Nice to meet you. So, okay, so this is coming back with the correct stuff, and that's correct. It's saying it can see that we have the right number there. So if I go to 6 here, there we go. That's submitted. Okay. Okay. Yes, good question. What are we doing? So on Thursday evenings, what I do is something called Code School. Code School is essentially my way of creating a little lesson for people who are beginner developers. And today we're dealing with HTML form validation using the built-in form validation. So not JavaScript, HTML5 validation. And we do these code schools every Thursday. This is actually the 3rd one. It's a new initiative that I've put together, and it's basically due to what's happening with the world. What I'm doing is I'm trying to provide a place for people to hang out. Building the howtocodewell.net website, the new one that's full of microservices. It's PHP, it's Symfony, it's Docker, it's AWS. It's for some reason. I mean, I work best in the mornings, as you can see. I'm a bit slow tonight. I wake up and I'm bing. Okay, right, back to it. So we've got the we've dealt with the min.
Hello,
the documentation. I should talk about the documentation a little bit. Scroll there. I'm sure it's on one of these examples. Read-only size, non-statute. Let's just put in title. It's the bookmark. Damn it. There we go. Sorry. Apologies. Title. Yes, here we go. Use the title attribute to specify but explanation is for the label and not for the title. So let's go back to the docs. CSS as easy. Exactly. Totally agree with you, Scavendan. Definitely. Okay, so this is one of the several reasons you must include information informing users how to fill out the control to match the requirements. While the titles